And looking and examining these, the A through F model, I just want to understand that we understand just how hard our teachers and our principals and our classified staff and everybody at the district office and on campus work to help our kids be successful. And I just want to let everybody know that it's my opinion that it shouldn't be something where we're blaming ourselves or feeling defeated in any way, and it's something that we are examining to take a look at and look at the gaps and see where we go forward from here. It doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to push our students or our teachers to do the very best that they can, but I just wanted to I wanted to start off by acknowledging that. So do you have anything to add?
Sure. Well, first of all, Ms. McSheffrey is joining us by telephone, and we need to make sure that we're louder than normal, even almost animated. Ms. McSheffrey, can you hear me? Amy, could you hear Donna?
Okay, now I can hear you. I can't hear. That's the first thing I heard.
So you missed Jeannie. You need to start over.
Take two.
And we call this meeting to order. Okay.
Like I said, I want to make sure that okay.
Yeah, I'm not able to make anything out. I can.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Okay. So I was just basically saying that, I want this conversation to acknowledge all of the hard work that our teachers, our staff, our administrators do every single day, that this is one test that's taken one day or through several days throughout the year, and it's not necessarily the best measure of our students and our staff, and that it should never be seen as a way to punish or demoralize, but instead a way for us to find gaps and to work on and focus on the things that we need to focus on.
Great. I think
totally understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. It's really muffled.
it's not working.
I can hear when you first
Do we
speak
have
into the speaker and then it just...
Do we have another option as far as a conference call or phone?
Just a minute, Ms. Pfeffer, we're checking to see if we can put on another phone.
No, I can hear you.
That's because I guess she's got to my
We'll have to
phone.
pass the phone around.
Yeah, that may be the best option.
We may just pass the phone around. I think I can see it.
Do you have a good battery charge right now?
This is Jay's. If you could use my mind's off.
All right, I'll take the microphone.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for getting together to do this study session. We thought it was important to proactively get our thoughts and framework for guiding the district so that it was not reacting to letter grades, but instead proacting to the way we want to guide teachers and encourage teachers. And I think Ms. Castine said it well: no blame, no shame. Knowing that there are elements of tons and tons of work to do when we have a standards-based system that's based on typical grade level practices. So Dr. Peterson's put a team together to do a couple of things. One, to orient us to the math of the A through F model, and we really don't want to spend more than 5 or 6 minutes on that. Is that fair enough, Eric? So Eric's going to walk us through the math. And then everybody's got something to share as it relates to how we use A through F or test results or what we do at our PLCs. So these guys are at the table around us, most of them. We'll do a quick introduction to chime in on your requests. So this is a board discussion. So it's really for the 5 of you to chime in, help offer guidance. At the end of our time together, I'm going to try to summarize the key elements that I hear from you as a collective board so that I can move forward as your chief executive officer, guiding the culture of our school district around what could be, a reaction to letter grades in anticipation that schools with poverty will, from the projections produced by the ADE, looks like there's a disparity. So they're not going to, the growth pieces aren't going to show to the degree that many of you have expressed to me that you value. So Dr. Peterson, would you like to orient us and then introduce Dr. Dupin?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm a little froggy, so you have to forgive my voice. We are excited to be at the table here for this conversation tonight. We believe that we'll be able to share just a brief overview as to as to what the A through F model looks like, how it's divided up in measuring. And then we stand prepared as a team here. We've got a cross-section of folks at the table that will join in the conversations, Dr. Lewis, that as your questions and comments and concerns are brought forward. So I'd like to first start with just a quick whip around the table so we could do a quick introduction to everybody. So we have,
Oh, that won't work.
and then but we'll just go around with Miriam.
Miriam Bridgman,
Diane, Gina Clark,
Jeannie Castine,
Dorothy Green, Michelle Berg,
Carl Zaragoza.
Adriana Becker.
And Eric Duke.
And we'll start with Dr. Dubin, who's going to give a brief overview of the A through F model. He'll touch a little bit on the time frame and what's coming up, as well as look at what does the model look like, as how it's broken apart for points. So I'll turn over to Dr. Dubin.
Good evening, Dr. Peterson, Dr. Lewis, members of the board, and guests. This evening, I want to start by taking us back to, first of all, making sure everybody has a copy of the packet of material that we're going to view. Ms. McJeffrey, I apologize, I don't have a copy
I'll take a
for you
picture of it.
available. We'll get it to you, thank you. I want to begin by just orienting you quickly to what we have. We have, first of all, a timeline.
Can you test to see if Amy's hearing us?
I can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Okay.
Very good.
Okay, perfect.
All right, just one more time quickly, Ms. McJeffrey, we're going to send you a picture of the paper materials that I'm sharing with the team this evening. So the first page orients us to a timeline of the State Board of Education's calendar of events as it relates to the A through F letter grade process. The second page is the fairly detailed framework of how points are to be allocated. And the third page is a breakdown that I've created to illustrate what this framework for allocating letter grades and creating those grades means to us. So I'll begin with page 1, and I want to direct your attention to the highlights that we have placed on the paper. This information is actually publicly available on the State Board of Education's website. We did not create them. Going back to August 28th, the board extended its timeline to issue the school letter grades, and I think that this is evidence of what I spoke to the last time we had a discussion on this topic, which was the difficult and complex nature of this discussion. The state board is wrestling very, I think, productively around the validity of assigning letter grades, a single letter grade, to very complex learning organizations. And they're really trying to come up with ways to meet the intent and the letter of the law, while at the same time honoring the complex work of running schools and the work of teaching and learning. So they have extended their timeline in order to have more discussion about what the letter grades mean and how to set cut scores to establish A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's. So they've been working with, the State Board of Education has been working with Department of Education personnel, and they've also been working with the Accountability Advisory Group. Over time, I'll be going back to the State Board of Ed to participate or to listen to additional discussions. They're planning an upcoming conversation September 25th and another one on October 9th. I'm sorry, on September 22nd and September 25th. On October 9th, at this point, we expect being able to get our preliminary letter grades, actually having them released to the public. We'll have access to them a few days prior. Now, this could change. This is what we know right now. This timeline could be delayed yet again, depending on their conversations. In the interest of time, I'm actually just going to refer us to page 3, which provides, I think, a somewhat simplistic breakdown of how the points are allocated based on the model that's currently has been adopted and is being worked by the Accountability Working Group and ADE staff. What I want to point out here is that there are, just working from the top of the page down, there are essentially 3 sources of data for the school letter grades. AZ Merit is 80% of the school letter grades. 80%. Now it's diced and proportioned in different ways, but 80% comes from AZ Merit, 10% comes from Azella, and then up to 10% or 10% comes from other sources, which may or may not include AZ Merit. So the way that the points are broken down are as follows. Just working our way around the pie chart. For later reference, this follows the order of the framework on page 2. 30% is based on proficiency in ELA and math. That is students' attainment of the cut scores that have been established for proficiency. Points will be awarded for growth. 50% of the model, that's the red section of the pie and the green section of the pie. 50% of the model is based on student growth. The first is related to student growth percentiles, which compares essentially like students and their progress over time. The green portion of the pie is student growth to target, which involves setting a scale score that creates a kind of straight line trajectory between where a child is and where they would need to be in order to attain proficiency within 3 years. So if I'm in 3rd grade and I take the assessment, they project to create kind of a set of benchmarks as to where they would want to have the child be in 4th grade and 5th grade in order to be proficient in 6th grade. So you get points based on how much of that progression a child attains year to year. Moving on into the purple portion of the pie, we move into English language learner performance. 5% is based on the number of students who attain proficiency on Azella, with points being awarded for each child who attains proficiency. An additional 5% are awarded based on growth on Azella. So that may be a child who's moving from one proficiency level to another, may not necessarily be proficient, but is making progress. The orange portion of the pie, the last 10%, is what is called acceleration readiness. For elementary school districts, this can be any number of things, and it's a set of award statements. So it's designed to capture and award points for whatever we would get the highest number of points in. So that includes student participation or increases in student participation in high school math. A big one for us could be decreasing the number of students minimally proficient in 3rd grade, and also decreasing the instances of high levels of chronic absenteeism, among other things. So that's how the breakdown looks right now. Again, this is a work in progress based on ongoing discussions at the board level.
I think at this point,
Just let's have the board members just kind of do a check-in on what you understand and what you might have some desire to have clarity on. Ms. McSheffrey, are you still able to hear us?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And I would just like to say that thank you, Dr. Griffin. I attended the A-to-F section at the law conference, and it was an hour long, but it's basically you summarized what they talked about, and very well, thank you. And I think that, all these things that they're measuring are good things. I think they're fair, and I think they're achievable for us, especially because there is so much weight on the growth measure. So I was actually pleasantly surprised to kind of hear all the detail during that A-to-F session, and I think, like I said, Dr. Griffin has explained it well in this short amount of time.
Yeah, I'd like to say also, I don't know if Amy can hear me, that at the conference in Flagstaff in June, I believe, when I went to, ADOT was also there as well, explaining the A to F letter grades. So I was able to understand a lot more after that, and I'm seeing, I hope it's just not going to be affecting us negatively. I know that they're trying to have all these exceptions and trying to have, like this 10%, the last one, the orange. But, I'm worried about how it's going to look for us as a district. Also, I have a question about the high inclusion level. Is that referring to special ed kids or kids with disabilities getting included into, it's on the orange part where it says high inclusion level, right after chronic absenteeism. Is that?
Yes, it does. It's related to special education students. There's a little bit of additional detail on the back of page 2 in your framework, just having to do with the numbers of students in special education courses and the mainstreaming of those students.
Thank you.
I have a question. I have some other question. I saw went to the ADAP at the law conference. You mentioned student growth. They mentioned that there too, but you added a little onto it, whereas there's going to be certain steps for the student growth. And it's not going to be if the student really grows, it's going to be if they meet the step. The cutoff point more or less that week to get more allocation for it. So if we have a child, like a lot of our children, they haven't been read to as young children and stuff like that. So we're getting them kind of like in a minus position coming into kindergarten. And so by 3rd grade, they might be a first to a second grader. So if by halfway through 4th grade, if they make 3rd grade, that's a big, it's bringing it up there, but we're not hitting the steps. So how much did the board, in other words, is it all or nothing when you don't hit the steps? Because, you know, we might have tremendous growth, and we do have tremendous growth with our kids, but it might not be what they consider growth because of their arbitrarily saying, well, by 4th grade, they should be here. If not, by 6th grade, they should be here. And they're not going to make it according to their arbitrary cutoff points. Do you understand what I'm trying to get?
I just want to say that I concur with your analysis. The way the framework explains that particular part, when you're talking about a student growth to target, points are awarded based on students reaching their annual targets. So I read that, and there are some things about this that are unknown. I'm learning this model along with pretty much everybody else and my colleagues across the state. So I read that as, yes, you need to make that annual target in order to receive the points. The model has been built to award greater numbers of points to lower achieving students, those for whom the gaps are the greatest, because of, I'm presuming, the work that would be required in order to help students meet those targets rapidly.
Eric, is the target within the grade level band, or does it presuppose, let's say you have a 1st grade reader who's a 5th grade child who makes progress to 3rd grade reading level? What credit might that child get, or towards that school, or towards that letter grade?
Good question. So it is my understanding that it is based on getting them to proficiency within whatever their grade level will be within that 3-year period of time. So if I am a 3rd grader with a 1st grade reading level, my targets are still based on trying to get to proficiency by 5th grade. So that creates incredibly.
And Ms. McSheffrey, I remember you saying something at the conference about liking the 3-year piece, and I think that's what Eric's speaking to. You want to comment on that?
Well, I mean, it seems like a good goal, especially if we have these kids for 3 years. It seems as though, I mean, I think it's a lot harder when you don't, when the kids come and go, you know? So if we have these kids that we can be working with for 3 years, that seems like a more fair target than reaching it in 1 year. So I think the fact that there's a 3-year target in there seems a little more fair.
Yeah, I think I appreciate the fact that it's been recognized in theory, and then we'll see.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Carl? Ms.
So Dr. Lewis, it's easy for me to just like make assumptions and ascribe values and pretend I can know what was in the mind of the State Board of Ed with some of the delays here. But I think it would be helpful for me in this conversation to hear from you and others who were at the board meeting. I think if there was like a standard to achieve, we would have that standard, take the test, here's your score. And that it's been delayed, to me, begs a question on what that's about. So I think it would be helpful for me to hear from you and others. And I'm sure it's conjecture, maybe you know some inside information, but like why has it been delayed? I think that is an important thing for us to think about.
Thank you for asking that question. I'll take the first response, and Erica and if others chime in. There has been tremendous debate over the performance achievement and the growth piece. And they toggle back and forth over the concept of if we focus on more growth than achievement by standard proficiency, are we watering down the expectations for all children? And the argument back was, well, we can really see that when a child comes to the school, however the child comes to school, that we want to document that growth over time. So they've toggled back and forth on growth. What they haven't been able to break through is measuring where a child really is versus relative to that grade level standard. So that work has yet to be figured out, and they go back and forth. Then the second thing that happened is they had a board turnover, and they're now in the throes of re-educating the current board, whereas the first board has reached a certain point. So they're still negotiating the value. The third component that's at the table politically is the districts that have been making A's pretty much consistently have a like demographic, and the A schools worry that the growth model won't be achievable because they might have a ceiling effect. So there's some political discussion on the A schools not being able to show growth when in fact their kids come at or above grade level. So it's a very interesting political social agreement that I think the state board's going through. Would you add anything to that?
I think that was well stated, and then I would add only one additional dimension, which is yet at the end of the day, when all these points are allocated, they have yet to determine what percentage of total points yields an A, what yields a B, what yields a C, D,
The
and
actual
F.
bookmarking.
Right.
So the final piece that's really plagued them is every time the ADE, and God bless the staff members there who have been up till 2 in the morning every day working on this stuff. Every time they play it out, it does not seem to show poverty schools making gains. It almost always shows poverty schools, or what they use Title I as their definition, as in the CD category and not in the AD category. And I would want to go on the record as saying I don't have that data, and I can't be firm on that data, but that's the trend that they keep butting up against. That's fair from your sitting at the table?
Okay, so then so I have 2 more questions, maybe more, actually.
Good, that's why we're here.
I hear from some folks, not State Board of Ed members, but advocates that care about the same kids that we care about, that all schools can achieve an A. So the question that I have is, because we had a different model, and then we haven't had a model for a couple years, and now we're trying to play out a new model. Is it possible for, if all schools were brilliant and putting very intentional efforts for this work, that all schools could potentially earn an A, or is this on some sort of curve and distribution where by design there are A schools, B schools, a ton of C schools, some Ds and Fs?
The second one. And I say that to you because Dr. Dubin and I had a conversation about the norming. What it looks like is there's about a 31 to 71% overall points.
Cluster.
Of findings. And they don't know where to put the A, the B, or the C. And then there's the political social agreement of, well, we must have failing schools, or we must have A schools, or how, what if we put the A schools in the middle of the curve? Is that us being weak as leaders? So the argument right now is the actual placement of the bookmark for what is an A or what is a B. And it is a social political agreement among these folks relative to where does the natural split occur, or what are the components. It has been true that every time they played out the poverty schools by the masses, with the exception of some unique exceptions, are fundamentally in the lower part of that. Is that
Yes.
a fair description?
Yes. So,
The accountability group said you must make it attainable for all schools to get an A. So they're really struggling with the very question you're asking. Ms. McSheffrey, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
okay, so this is an interesting conversation because for the last few years without this A through F, we've talked more about the easy merit, the underlying information that feeds into this proposed model, which is shifting. And I know we've had some different feelings
As a board?
and values as a team, not just on the board, but beyond the governing board, on the validity and value in these assessments. I'm not hearing that at all tonight. I'm hearing there's assessments, there's no shame, no blame. This is a point in time. I don't think I saw it this year, but maybe 2 years ago in some of the reports we got from ADE, it said not valid and reliable. So I guess the question I want to know is more than this model, which is something, but just like, what Dr. Lewis, what is your relationship to AZ Merit? Is it valid? Is it reliable? Is it something useful, not to measure, let's say, us against not Title I schools, but to measure to a certain degree how we're doing compared to like schools and like districts?
I think it's an important piece of the puzzle, and I think there are many things that make schools great.
Yep.
And this is one piece of information that tells us where our kids are compared to Arizona students statewide
Great.
in reading comprehension and math, mostly calculation. Still some elements of application yet to be defined. And then we had the state say that they didn't value the Ames science test, so that was asked to be removed from this formula. And I think there are many measures that show students' development cognitively, their aha moments, their ability to articulate, their ability to show social emotional maturity, their ability to problem solve, that this test does not measure. But yes, it is an important piece of information. One of the things that concerns most educators across the nation is that one test getting 80% of the value of a letter grade seems to send a message to the public that it is a definition of it being a good school or a bad school.
Yeah, well, I think, I'll go there in a minute. But I actually think our community doesn't know how to use this because they don't have any information. Look, we are folks that are steeped in this by profession and by choice, and we spend a lot of time trying to figure this out. I don't know if all our parents are putting in the same amount of effort. So I think we have an opportunity to kind of help them
We agree.
evaluate and determine, is this a good school for me and my family? But I think I just wanted to underscore something because I think it's important for this conversation. And I know normally up on the dais, we just ask you the questions or each other, but we're at a different table. So is it appropriate to ask like a school
That's
leader?
why we're here,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
And I was thinking Michelle probably
Great.
is ready to chime in.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear from,
Yes, absolutely,
Miss-
crisscross away.
great, on like the value, like is this valuable, is this not? Is this a hoax, is this a ploy, is this a trick to undermine public schools? Like, not that it's everything, but is there value in this assessment
And
as
Michelle,
an
that's not
instructional
your
leader?
question. Is this a trick or is this a ploy? I know, Ms. McSheffrey, you and I have had a couple of conversations about the political intent, but the question for Michelle, do you want to chime in, Ms. McSheffrey?
Well, I mean, it's obviously all very political. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we want to put Pittsburgh on the spot.
Thank you.
Yeah. But is it valuable to her? That's a really good question, I think.
And that's where we'll go, is talk about the value of it.
Value AC merit or the label, I guess would be my clarification.
I was more interested in the AZ Merit as an instructional leader, not on the label, because the label to me is a whole different conversation with the public, different than measure to evaluate readiness and inform teaching, right, is what.
Yeah, and it's interesting, informed teaching has become a backdoor hallway ADE. Joke's too strong of a word,
Yeah.
but it has been mocked. That it does not inform teaching because even reports don't inform the concepts that were or were not mastered. The label or the profile, as you just described, is its own kind of communication PR job, which is why we're really having the meeting tonight, is to get a sense of the five of you, what you want the message to be as you deal with your constituents and the people who say, why are your quote schools so bad? I mean, what's your retort to that if you get a slew of D's from this particular profile mathematics?
I think when we're doing basically the belief in that, when we had parent input surveys and things like that, the number one thing was not any school that the parents wanted. They wanted a safe environment. The number two thing was the teacher. It's down to that level. I've talked to people who have, one of the secretaries where I worked, I asked because she dropped off her kid before she came to work, I asked where her kid went to school. It was a charter school. And I said, what's it like? And she goes, it's very nice, and went on about it. I looked it up, and it was a D school. She didn't even know it at that time. Right. I mean, there are parents who say, okay, safe environment, good teacher, and it has to be in a school, but they're not the majority of our constituents. It's at a lower level. Is my kid safe? Is the teacher working with my child? Is the child learning? Not if it's an A, B, or C school.
Well, I mean, I guess speaking from a school leader perspective, I believe that the test is something that I do value. It's not to say that it's the only thing that I value. I think that the question about whether it does inform instruction, I think that depends upon how you're using it. So, you know, I think that data can be, I don't know, I try to just, I got this from a former, data is, you know, it just is. There's not, you don't necessarily need to apply an emotion to it. And so I personally, I know Dr. Lewis knows this about me, and Dr. P, I'm racing to get those scores. And some of those of you who do know me, like my belief in working in a Title I school is that I don't want to wait until the big test of life to know how my students are going to fare against other people their age, their peers. And so, you know, I'm not saying that is exactly where it is, and that the whole idea of the 3 years, you know, that goal, like, you know, in a Title I school, we basically have kindergarten to 12th grade to close that gap, because at that point then, you know, we do need to make sure that they're ready for those different options. And so it's a piece of the puzzle for me to try to figure out what we need to do as a school to help our students. And so I do value AZ Merit, but in terms of informing instruction, I think we have we do use it as sort of, you know, we were sort of talking like a planning piece. It's a way for us to kind of get started, to check, you know, we have a lot of really rich resource from our CINA department where we can create spreadsheets where we can see how students have moved up and how they have either moved up or stayed the same or moved behind in different areas from year to year. We have conversations around that data. We talk about, like, why did this group of students move up? A year, made significant gains where, these students actually fell back. What were some of the things that we were doing in the classroom? We have those dialogues, and then we pass that information on to the next teacher so that we can get sort of like a head start with it. But in terms of informing instruction, we have a lot of other tools that we use to help that, because the AZ Merit is a summative test, and so that's where we go from there.
I'm going to piggyback off of what Ms. Berg was saying. It's a piece, and it's a piece that we need to look at. And as Tyson receives all that information, he sorts through for the schools, and he's able to provide the spreadsheets that really help the schools be able to identify the sections that the kids are in and who's close to moving over. If we just give them that little extra bump, and then we can move other kids up. The conversation that we are really getting deep into right now is that how do we get to the individual kid level in looking at a variety of data. So last Thursday at our leadership council meeting, one of the pieces that we did is we spent about an hour taking a look at what is it at each site that we are doing in being able to dig down to that individual student level, and then how is that impacting instruction, and where's our PLCs coming in that process, and then having conversations with our interventionists and the training. And I'm going to ask Miriam if she'll talk just a little bit about the shift that we're making in the working with the interventionists that leads to that really coming to that individual kid level.
So one of the things that we have moved from is just working on using a scripted program and saying, okay, this student scored this, and so now they're going to be in the A, B, or C program. Instead, what we're doing is we're looking at diagnostic assessments that really are embedded in our new Wonders and Study Sync program, and then we're digging down to see what are the students missing, what are the holes, and so rather than just plugging them into the program, an intervention program, what we're doing is we're looking at those holes. And we're saying, okay, let's take a look at the units of study, because what we want to do is make sure that whatever is happening in the classroom is being supported in the intervention classroom and vice versa. So rather than just being in a program, we're really making sure that there is a tight alignment between what's happening in the classroom as well as what's happening in intervention. One of the ways in which we're doing that is through the use of intervention institutes. So last year, Alan Hirsch and I began the work by working with all of the reading interventionists and SPED teachers to make sure that there was a tight alignment and not just a program. We're not teaching a program, we're teaching students, and it could be a program or it could be the materials that are being part of the Wonders and or Study Sync, but mostly Wonders.
So that goes back to where Easy Merit is what is our starting guide per se at the beginning of the year, and then we dig deeper.
Great. Super helpful. Thank you.
I'm going to have to jump off. So if I could say my thoughts really quickly. The last thing I want is for teachers, for kids to feel anxiety about the safety merits or our labels in the end. I mean, I do think the labels are going to mean something, regardless if they mean anything to us. Because I do believe that we all believe that other things matter a lot more. You know, the experience kids have in school, if they feel safe, if they feel welcome, if they're a transgender kid and they're feeling accepted and welcome. I think those parts are really huge. Adventurous learning, I mean, we're just starting on that, and I think we need to continue down that road, because those are the kind of things that are going to make our kids happy to be at school, our teachers happy to be at school, I hope, because if they're not happy while they're with us, they're not going to be interested in learning. I mean, so I do think we're heading in the right direction, and I don't want teachers to feel anxiety about this stuff, but we will hear about it, and you all know that. It is, unfortunately, it will send a message, I think, to our community. So we just have to, I think we're on the right track, and it's that what are the things that we can not react, but we can say, look, these are the great things that are happening at our school, regardless of what these labels say. That's just my 2 cents, but I do have to take off.
Thank you, Mrs. McSheffrey. That was a nice summary. And I don't know, Mrs. Castine, if you would like to kind of maybe get everyone to chime in as we maybe move into a summary statement around the table, or what are your thoughts? why you'd like to do this.
Thanks, Ms. McSheffrey, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, I mean, all I want to say about these scores and the idea of letter grading, it is extremely political. You know, I hate the term achievement gap because it, to me, insinuates that our kids can't achieve. They totally can. It's an opportunity gap. And what we know is that our kids lack the opportunities that many of their wealthier peers have. And so when you have students who are coming to kindergarten rich in opportunities, whether that's travel or, you know, having hundreds of books in a home, where some of our kids don't have any books in their home. They're deprived of opportunities. And so I know that in my conversations with people, because I know that my husband, bless his heart, he, you know, his daughter went to middle school this year, and he takes one look and he said, "Oh, we can't send her there. We can't send her. It's a terrible school." And I was like, "Well, what makes you think that?" And the last rating for it was a C school. And I said, with all of the opportunities we have provided Andy with, she is going to be just fine. And sure enough, she's struggling right now because she's in all honors classes, you know? So when I have conversations with my constituents, I'm going to be talking about the opportunity. And one thing I will say, because we know, you know, it's not that poor kids cannot achieve, it's because they're deprived of opportunities. And one thing that I'm proud of in Creighton District is that we go out of our way to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs and fill in the gaps when our state will not provide the social services needed in those families, that we have the supper program, that we have the preschool program, and that we try as much as we can within the limits of our budgets to provide our kids with rich learning opportunities and adventurous learning. So these scores and these grades mean nothing to me. Should I say that in a public forum? I guess I just did. So, you know, and I think of that school in Seattle a couple of years ago where they were deemed a failing school, but still they had like one of the most well-renowned marching band in the whole entire United States, but because of the rating system that happened in Washington a couple of years ago, they were like demoted too, or because they refused to participate, then they were suddenly an F school. So, you know, this is a way for I think people to serve some of their own political needs or wants. And so when I talk to people about it, I'm gonna stress the opportunities that we try to provide our students with in Creighton, because I see it every time I go onto a campus, every time I talk to a teacher and they're excited about the things that their kids are doing, and you know, and every time I go to a board meeting. So I'm not worried about my messaging, and I think that that's perhaps how we should perhaps go forward with it as well. That it's something that we're not worried about because we're looking at what the real gap is, and that's opportunities, and we're working on providing those opportunities.
Section B, would you like to chime in?
Sure. Just to not take a lot more of your time, ditto everything Ms. Castine said. Extremely, you know, I mean, her and I have both been teachers in schools and have both been in, worked in Title I schools, and, you know, exactly her words, even what she said in a public meeting, you know, it doesn't mean that much to me when I go to the schools and I see all the wonderful things happening in the schools. So I see the learning happening, I see the excitement of the kids, I see, you know, all sorts of incredible things happening. I see parades of book literature with everybody dressed up, you know, and excited about books, you know. So I'm really not, I mean, I also, you know, want to reiterate what Ms. McSheffrey said about, I hope there's no stress, you know, for the teachers with this. I really hope, I know there probably will be, but if you guys could let the other ones know that might be stressed about it, that this, you know, just to keep on trucking, because that's really, I think everything's going in a really good direction within the district, and we'll just keep headed in that direction.
I think that's a really important message that we have to find a way to make sure that we communicate to our teachers, because that's often one of their biggest angsts and sources of anxiety, is this sense that, oh my gosh, those test scores got published, you know, we're a C or a D or whatever kind of level at school, and now all of the blame's going to be laser focused on me as the classroom teacher. And I think as a district, at the district level, we've done a really good job of showing them that we are coming alongside them, and we're here to support them and lift them up to the level that we know all of our teachers and all of our students are capable of. But when those things get splashed around the news, or they're being talked about, you know, in the neighborhoods, I think it's really important, the message that you're giving as board members to those teachers, that it's not going to be the blame and shame game, and it's not going to be laser focused on what did you not do or what did you not do correctly in order to show the growth that we needed to show to get higher test scores. So I think being able to really frame that message in a really taking it seriously, but also being positive, and we're moving forward in the direction that we've been working on, and that's where we want to continue to go. We'll do a lot to support them and lift them up and help them not feel that sense of oppression or angst about what ends up happening. So thank you, and we appreciate that.
I want to get to the yes and, because I think, yes, absolutely, our district is going in the right direction. I think we value a lot of things. And what I've heard at this table is that there is a value, somewhat. There is value to the test scores. That's not the only thing we're looking for. So I want to emphasize, I heard that and I agree with that part. There's a part I disagree with, and I think if we send a message that no, these scores don't matter. Actually, we've heard of other schools and teachers, they just don't administer the test, and that creates problems. Like, there are problems with that. I'm not saying that's happened here. I've never heard of that. I just want to be clear on the record. I've heard that in other more wealthy districts, actually, that didn't want to participate in these things. So I think that's important to, I think when we use that message, what I know some of my constituents here is just confirmation, defensiveness, and let's shift the conversation. Yeah, there are other things, but like, what are you hiding? Why is that? So I think we should couch it in the value that it is, not over glorify it for something that it isn't. So I think it's a yes and. I also, we talk about like, what's that here? Yes and, oh, the blame game. I found, I actually, it's interesting to hear this, Dorothy. I guess because when I think about what it takes to help our students, our community thrive, achieve, succeed, live, it's usually not just the one teacher. As a former teacher, I tried a lot of things. I tried to go around broken systems, and at the end of the day, I'm like, it's all of these teachers that are in this together. And guess what? Like, at the end of the day, I'm Ms. Bird, but that's the principal that I ascribe a lot of that. And as a board member, I don't even worry about that. I'm like superintendent. So at the end of the day, if anyone's feeling any pressure, it should be like, what are we as a group not doing? Exactly. We either are all successful or we're all failing. And if any one human in our district is feeling that responsibility on their own, then we're doing something wrong. I really think the board has tried to lead with the spirit of community from day one, when the 5 of us board members came together and adopted that in our core way of being. So if there's a way we can communicate our collective ownership, good and bad, data is, yes and, I think all of those things are helpful. And then I'm just going to wrap with one more thing, Dr. Lewis, which is school labels will come out, and they will be whatever they are. And without us being proactive, I know you wanted information and direction for staff, and I hear that. But I also feel like without us being proactive in our community, communicating what these grades are, people will make up their own determinations.
Oh, yeah.
And they will ascribe to, I think, some dangerous rhetoric. So I think what could be helpful, I don't know what this looks like, but what are we doing to inform the public on how you should evaluate a school? For example, When my wife and I wanted to put our daughter in daycare, we were terrified. We didn't know what's a good daycare, what isn't. We didn't know where to start and what to research and who was biased and who wasn't. We dropped in a school, a daycare center. I think they called themselves a school, but they were proud of their NACE certification. But they said, here's the thing, like this school is not for everyone. And they gave us a checklist of things that we should consider for our family and for our daughter. And they invited us to take a tour. So we scheduled a tour, we took a look, we checked it off, we're like, that one's not good for us. We went and did that, and we found a school that we liked. I don't know what we're doing otherwise. We put up our videos and we're telling people come check out our schools, but if there is a checklist or something to help inform our families, this is how you can evaluate a good cultural fit for your child. So maybe we're getting away from a good school, but like a good fit for your kid, because they're different for different families and different kids need different things. That could be helpful. And there could be some language on, you could look at these A through F if you care about that. You could look at this, or you could look at these things. And come schedule a tour, talk to the principal, and see if this is a good place for your child. I think that could be helpful. And I just want to recognize this was for staff, but I think if we don't address the community piece, we're going to be on the defense and the reaction for a long time. And that's exhausting.
A forever goal. Not a one and done. Any other final thoughts that you'd like to put out, and then I'll summarize what I heard.
Yeah, I'm semi with you, caught in between. Basically, yes. I think the data that can be utilized, we can utilize it for our improvement, not looking at, oh my God, it's horrible and we're such and such, but utilize where we're at and to help measure growth, to where we want to be next year, not as, oh my God, it's horrible and we got to do something, blah, 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 and be down in the dumps about it. It's just utilize it in a positive way. As far as, the constituents, I've been talking with people around my neighborhood of Bay, a lot of them, their grandparents and all that. And it's basically, this kid, my grandson loves school. He's having so much fun. He doesn't want his mother there to help volunteer. He wants her out of there so he can run the whole class. And things like that. They're not looking at the score that's coming or anything else like that. It's the relationship that they're having with the school. And I think it was a good idea quite a few years ago to go back to neighborhood schools. And I don't think it shouldn't make that much of a difference if a parent is feeling their child is progressing, they're safe, and all that other good stuff, that if the school does not get a B or an A, to say this is not the school for my kid, because it might be a fit for my kid. And my kid is progressing. Yeah, I'm happy.
I know everybody who was brought to the table didn't get a chance to share. Anything you want to chime in on as far as just a personal observation
I come in with a very different perspective on using the AZ Merit data. As we worked this summer on Curriculum Cabinet, it is how do we use this data to inform our work, but in a productive and meaningful way. And as Dr. Lewis said, when you look at AZ Merit data, they only provide you data at a domain level. So it is very difficult to dig down to find out what it is exactly that we're doing very well at or where we need some work. So we used that data in our work this summer to look at domains and to look at domains across grade level bands. So we only have data in 3rd through 8th grade. And then we used our ATI benchmark data that provided a risk report down to the standards level, but we used the domains that AZ Merit indicated that we were weekend, got down to the standards level, but then we had vertical articulation across those grade levels around what do the standards say? What is it that they are expecting students to be able to do? And it were those conversations that was building our capacity as teachers, as leaders. And we did look at then the AZ Merit Sample Test to see how are they being assessed there, how are they being assessed on benchmark, but that wasn't good enough for our teachers because they wanted students to be able to explain their thinking. So a lot of them are open response questions that they added, but using that as a framework. But it was, how do we use this data in a productive way? So I do think it has its value, but placing a label on it to grade schools, it's not the intention. So it's become what it's become, and it's unfortunate. But I always try to think, how can we use this in a positive, productive way? So that's 2 cents.
Yeah. So I think first I would really want to voice for teachers that it's very reassuring to hear kind of the tone that the board is going with, because I know that in the past we have had a really big pendulum swing of testing, and so as a person down in the trenches with the kids, there's so much more than that. So to know that we're valuing that as a board and as a school district, I think that's really important to us. And I feel very similar to, I think several people said this, the AZ Merit has definitely been something that we kind of just need, because frankly our kids they're coming at certain opportunity gaps, and so it has been really helpful to kind of be able to see well, where are they at with these students? Not so much as well, that's where we're at, but really that first step to it. And then, I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly what Donna said, but I think for our parents though, they really they're experts in their kids, they're not experts in their schools, and so I found that my parents don't necessarily come up, or even people who are asking about well, what's your school like? It isn't necessarily the label. So I feel our parents would be very reassured by both the thoughts that we're hearing today, but then also knowing that their teachers are also not necessarily their experts in the school label, but we're experts in your kid. And so we can tell you everything that's going on with your student. When they know that that's the value, I think that's much more important to them than what the school was doing whole group. So I guess I would really just like to say thanks again for the support you've been providing the teachers. I think we're all feeling that. And if not, I will spread the word. And then also that we're being really thoughtful about the labels and how that's going to impact not teachers' perspectives, but then also the parents.
So I heard a range of perceptions. It's interesting that Donna said I kind of agree with you, and I kind of agree with you. And from it has no meaning to it's got a contextual meaning. And I heard kind of a desire for a yes and statement. I heard we might want to work on our messaging to ensure that we have in context what data is. That we might want to look at other ways that we do value the way schools are so much more than a test score. I heard a deep appreciation for the direction of the adventurous learning and the desire to continue to make learning fun and relevant. And using diagnostic information to truly inform instruction, not punish, blame, or shame. I think there was some recognition tonight of the political nature with which these scores are being derived, or these labels are being derived. I heard be persistent, but don't stress. I heard don't be defensive. Show the value in the context in what we are doing and how we are using it. But we also know that many things matter for children and the neighborhood and the feeling of community that schools bring. Did I capture it right?
Could you do a mass email to teachers, APs, and principals, and kind of summarize what went on
The essence of this meeting?
Yes, but also reiterate, put in bold letters, I don't care, caps, the board supports our teachers. We're not supporting the numbers that will come out.
Yes, I
Something
certainly
like
can.
that.
And as I meet with you all, or I'll send it out to you for some feedback to be sure I accurately represent
But,
your thoughts.
You're from Excellencio. Excellencio get the word. But you're represented, but,
is Gateway or
Right.
Loma Linda going to get the word?
I'm going right now to every campus.
Yeah.
And in essence, sending that message. There's two messages. One is, put this in perspective.
Right.
The board's behind you. The board's still about this. And yes, it matters. The second message has to do with get ready for innovation and get ready for bad ideas and rumors, because we got to manage our rumors because we're going to be going into some creative thinking, and we can't get to creative thinking without shooting down a bunch of bad ideas first. So get ready for rumor management. That's been the two messages I get from you right now. Thank you for that suggestion. Any other sense of direction?
All right, so we can adjourn this portion, the study session, and get ready, what, 5-10 minutes to get ready for the regular board meeting?
We're just going to the dais, so.
Okay, we're leaving this here, okay, all right, gotcha.
We'll leave this here.
I didn't know if we were gonna.
No, we'll leave the table. All right. Sorry, folks, we're gonna leave the table. We'll do the dishes afterwards. Yeah, living room conversation.
Meeting to order, the regular board meeting of September 19th, 2017. And I'd like to ask Gina Clark to lead us in the pledge of allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let the record show that all governing boards are present tonight except for Ms. McSheffrey, as are Hilda Juarez and members of cabinet. And that will bring me right to the welcome statement. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting and remind the audience of the request to address board cards that must be completed and submitted to the board secretary if they wish to speak to an agenda item. Board policy provides for 2 cards, white cards to be submitted in order to speak to an agenda item, and blue cards to be submitted in order to speak during public comments. Policy also states there is a 5-minute maximum time limit per speaker. Due to the open meeting law, board members are not allowed to address items that are not on the agenda. If you do not want to address the board but wish to give your comments in writing, you can do so on a goldenrod sheet and all members will receive a copy. All right, approval of the agenda.
I approve the agenda as presented, or I move the board approve the agenda as
Carl just approved it.
done.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have no public comments tonight, so that will take us right to the superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for a great work study session. I want to point out that I said I would send something out to all of you for review, and our wonderful, intelligent Hilda Juarez reminded me that would be violation of open meeting law, so thank you. And I think I got a good head nod from the summary that I made, so I'll put something together and share it with confidence, knowing that I've captured pretty much your points. The first thing I would like to share is Saturday, September 30th. We are having an immigration forum. We are working with Chicanos para la Causa, and it will be at Creighton. So Saturday, September 30th from 10 to 12, where we will be working with anybody who has questions about DACA or anyone who would like support with their legal guidance for immigration. 2, I would like to thank Maricel Schwartz. Is she here tonight? Schweitzer? Is she here tonight? Okay, well, she has accepted an opportunity to work with West Ed, and she has just been a wonderful leader for our community education program, and her last day will be Friday, so we will miss her very much. I am grateful that Ms. Ellen Heller has agreed to take on the many tall tasks we have of community education, and she will begin that work in transition this very week. And following that, because the dominoes continue, many thanks to Andy Gutierrez, right there, our principal of the year, who has accepted to take on the leadership role at Gateway. And so with Andy being here, I would like to take a minute to give him a round of applause. Finally, I would like to say congratulations to Dr. Amy Burgess, who has agreed to step up as acting principal at LCK. And when that was announced to her staff on Friday, She received a large, resounding applause, long from the staff and great support of her. So we really see a seamless transition with people who know the ropes and see the Creighton family as a whole. So I appreciate everybody stepping up and taking on the new challenges. The Phoenix Union High School District is having a high school expo November 4th. On Saturday, I have Spanish and English flyers, which we'll be getting out to our parent liaisons to encourage our students, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, to look at where they would like to go to high school. So we're working hand in glove with Phoenix Union on that. And finally, I would like to say thank you to Chris Hartza, our Director for Special Education, who just got us a $17,000 grant, which we'll be bringing to the board for Special Olympics. So our sports program is going to expand.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Lewis. That will bring us to governing board reports. Ms. Sexton Reese, do you have anything to report tonight?
No, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Zaragoza? Ms. Young?
Hi. Last week I was at the law conference. Mr. Sheffrey was there. A lot of the administration was there also. There was a lot of good breakout sessions. The A4 one with the grading system was one of them. I think Amy and I kind of like were following each other because we both showed up at a lot of the sessions, the same sessions. I have the conference agenda. Nothing was in paper when you went, but if you're interested in any of the breakout sessions, I think, Hilda, could you still print those?
I can have the board docs and they can look at them.
Okay, yeah, there were some good ones. I mean, there was crowdfunding, the pitfalls of crowdfunding, what to expect, the gender issues in schools and various things like that. So it was quite nice and very informative. I did go to the Saturday for the vote. They didn't change anything except some wordage. Everyone's into, well, I want this word instead of that word. Other than that, everything that the board agreed to was passed.
Thank you. And I have nothing to report either. Approval of consent.
Move the governing board approve consent A through K in accordance with policy BEDB-R.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. All right, and that brings us to educational services, update on gifted education services.
Our team for tonight's presentation and provide an update to the governing board in regards to our moving forward with our Creighton Gifted and Talented program.
Good evening once again, members, Superintendent Lewis, and executive team. I am pleased to be joined at the dais this evening by a wonderful team of representatives from our Gifted and Talented Education program. And before we begin, I'm going to ask them to come forward and introduce themselves and just to gather over here to my right. Ms. Baldwin, would you start? Just let us know your name and your role.
Deanne Baldwin. I am a gifted TOA at Biltmore Hunters.
Hi, I'm Jody Hernandez, and I'm a gifted TOA at Gateway, Creighton Capital, and LCK.
Kevin Steele, and I'm a TOA at Mount Vista, Excelencia, Macon, and
And the guest of the evening. So just stay close because you have your parts. This team has worked really diligently and in a very focused way to provide you with this brief update of the work that's been done. Tonight we will be reminding or revisiting our vision and mission that was created last year. We'll be sharing some additional highlights from last year's work. Then we're going to bring you up to speed on what has happened already this year. We're not even a quarter in and some amazing things have been happening in our program. We'll also share what we've been doing to examine best practices of districts and schools across the valley. And then we'll share with you our plans as we look ahead to the rest of the year and what's coming. Looking forward or looking deeply into our program, we are very proud of the vision that's been cultivated over time. It builds on the work of this board, it builds on the work of our strategic planning team, and we use this information to clarify our focus every time we speak, and every time we plan, and every time we engage around the work of supporting these learners. The Creighton Gifted and Talented program empowers adventurous thinkers, kind-hearted leadership, and collaborative learners. This is our vision. Our mission as a program is to provide challenging and diverse curriculum by engaging students in performance tasks, which are designed to foster advanced research and communication skills, develop critical thinking skills, and promote perseverance in problem solving. So it's very powerful what this vision and mission is, that they really pull from all the threads and all the priorities that we've established to send a clear message about the value and the influence of serving our gifted and talented learners.
I'm here to share with you some highlights from last year. We test students to find new students 3 times a year, and we did that last year and found 91 students through those 3 test periods. We are now using an online platform called COGAT, and it's really great because we get computerized results within 24 hours. We examine best practices by making site visits to other districts. We went to Kyrene, Chandler, and Scottsdale District to observe their gifted and talented programs. We expanded our knowledge through attending conferences about gifted and talented, and we provided direct services to students at all 9 schools. Next. Oh, do I do it? I'm sorry. And then a big highlight was this summer I had the privilege of taking 21 students from all 9 schools to ASU's Summer Physics in Motion camp. Personally, it was really great to get to know students a little bit better, spending a week with them on a full-day program. I really learned a lot more about anime and Little League Baseball and all sorts of their interests in a higher level. But also professionally, it was great to see how ASU does STEM and project-based, and they integrate a lot of writing into their program, and I think we need to start doing that more. So it was great to observe that. But I think you'd probably like to hear from a student who attended, so I'd like to introduce Brianna Droughton. She's a 7th grader at Excellencia.
Good evening. So in the summer I went to ASU and I really had a lot of fun in that program. My favorite was a roller coaster. We had to make stuff out of paper and we had to make an experiment of like using a ping pong ball, a marble, and a wooden bead and see if they could make it to the end of the roller coaster.
What was the third one?
Wooden bead.
Oh, a wooden bead. Sorry.
And like that was a lot of fun. And we did other projects as well, experiments, like we did balloon cars propelled by air, and we also did a cup experiment where we had to make it 2 feet tall. That's the picture where we did it. And we also did a paper one, which we had to do the same thing and make it 2 feet tall, and it had to withstand a little toy.
I love the face.
So we could, as you can see, the first picture shows when we were doing the cups, we had to limit options of popsicle sticks and cups so we could do it. So if you made one mistake, you can't go back from that. And the second one, that's when we were doing the balloon cars. We were trying to design the cars to make it go the farthest from all of them. And we had to figure out the wheels, the angle of the car, and like, figure out where to put the wheels. And the one that we named it the rat. So this one, you had to blow into the balloon from the straw, and when you were done, you would just let it go, and the wheels would just propel it. The second one would show when we were designing them, and we would use corks, bottle caps, or like really big caps. So in this one, this is when we tested our experiment, and we tried it 3 times to see which one would go the farthest, and each time it was the same one, the rat.
Thank you very much, Brianna, and the next part of the presentation is our year so far.
Okay, so up here we have our current gifted and talented numbers by school. And what we did with this data was we looked at the numbers and we did a little reshuffling with the TOAs and their assignments. So right now, Biltmore Preparatory Academy has 1 gifted TOA based on their numbers, and the rest are spread out. And we looked at equity so that all the kids are receiving the same services and are getting the same number of hours and the same services across schools. But based on Biltmore Preparatory, with 80, we did 1 person assigned to that. Okay, our COGAT testing, we started on Monday. It's been fun, lots of fun. Prior to testing, we did presentations at all sites regarding the nomination procedures and identifying those easy to miss students so the teachers were aware, especially with the number of new teachers coming in. It says we are currently updating the wording of testing results, but we have actually finished that in between when we created this and now. So we have a brand new letter, a very celebratory letter. We're excited about it. And that's the letter, that's the yes letter to parents informing them that their child has met the requirements to be a part of our COGAT, our Gifted and Talented program. So we began testing, and we test 3 times a year. And it's kind of exciting because it's been streamlined a little bit too with Synergy, so it's a little easier.
So, real quick, if you go back to the slide, where you're updating the letter, is it just a yes, like we're happy to tell you your kid is accepted in the program? Like, what does the letter read to the families who didn't? Because I know has created confusion in the past because it was very technical and... Right.
We do have 2 different letters. The yes letter, the no letter hasn't been revised at all yet. That's still under consideration. Okay. The yes letter is just a little more celebratory. So we haven't revised the no letter yet, but that's something that we can definitely discuss in the future. But right now, we only worked on the acceptance letter.
And so what we did is we tried to go through it and clear up a lot of that confusion and make it really direct and sort of kind of introduces and says, congratulations, your child was just assessed. These are the results. As a result of the assessment, your child qualifies. We do give a very little bit of information about what area or areas the child may have qualified in. And then we go in and say, we took a bit of a different direction with the letter, and we say, as a result of being qualified for this program, here are some wonderful options that are now available to you. And we describe the program, which is a little bit different. So we talk about the structure of the program, and we invite, if parents are interested in learning more, to have them return the little sign-off sheet so that they can then indicate their interest in further pursuing the program. We also give information about how they can reach out to their child's school principal, to the Gifted TOAs at Service site, or to the Educational Services team. So it's kind of specific, but it's really about, yay, the program, and here's what this means to you and your child.
Okay. I think the concern, and I shared with Dr. Lewis last year, but my daughter and a number of her peers were tested, and then a lot of parents got this very technical letter. Yeah, it talked about your, I can't remember. Yeah. It was like a 9 or a 7, and we're like, yeah, so anyway, the point is we had no idea what that meant, no one else knew what that meant, and it would have been nicer to say, hey, like, you know, the test happened, like, talk to the teacher about, like, where your kid is or something, because a lot of parents were, like, really confused and thought the kids weren't even proficient at the kindergarten level. So just saying there's a lot of opportunity for growth there.
And
We have addressed that.
just to add to that, I think we've had discussions about that last year, and what we decided is the report that Coggette sends with us did make it actually more confusing because it was using that technical language. There was a graph there, stay nines, all this other type of stuff. And I think we came to the decision that we were not going to actually attach the Coggette printed out version, but we were going to indicate it in a letter that went along that explains a little bit more in layman terms that they weren't able to make it, and but they're going to be best served in the regular classroom, and we would give some indication about the scoring or whatever, but it would be in more layman terms. And I think that was what the problem was the Coggette really got technical on the report they sent us.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so these are our current fall testing numbers, and this shows each school and the source that we received the recommendation. So we have, if you can, I always look at the Monte Vista one because we have 25 students that were recommended looking at at our AZ Merit data. So what we did was we looked at the AZ Merit data and we looked at students who scored highly proficient in either ELA or math, and we automatically nominated them at each of our sites, and we have quite a few. So we have a nice number of students who are being tested based on their AZ Merit data. And then we have some parent referrals, not as many as maybe we'll have later in the year, and then we have a few teacher recommendations as well. So it's pretty exciting.
The curriculum that we developed it to empower students to be adventurous thinkers, kind-hearted leaders, and collaborative learners, as our leader just talked about in our vision and mission. As far as adventurous thinking and being nurtured through STEM units that we started building this summer, and we're going to continue to kind of fine-tune the last couple, but we've got a good hold on those. We've got St. Float Make a Boat, which we're involved in right now with the students. May the Force be with you. Architecture and design, and the last one, Simple Machines and Inventions, when we're actually going to get into those. Rube Goldberg, after they learn about simple machines, they're going to have to be required to have so many simple machines in a Rube Goldberg. That's those mousetrap kind of things where you make a very complicated machine for some reason, and it's fun, but also the use of their learning on simple machines. Here's some pictures. Like I said, we're in the middle of Sink, Float, Make a Boat. The first top left up there, we were learning about density, and the students were finding out that it isn't just solids, it's actually liquids have different densities and gases have different densities. So they were pouring different liquids in there that we're going to layer out and figure out which ones are heavier and talk about density. On the top right, they were sinking, they were putting things in water and having them sink and float, and trying to come up with their own factors that they thought must have something to do with floating and sinking. I think that's most one of those. Then we went into actually making some boats out of tin foil, and the older, and like with a competition to kind of make it after they found out some factors that would make something float or sink, they would make their boats. The older kids actually got into calculating the density of these boats and the density formula, and I was really happily surprised that even with tin foil and our level of tools to use for measuring and everything, that actually came out, the ones that were supposed to hold the most weight did, and the ones that were supposed to sink first did. So that was kind of neat. As far as kind-hearted leadership, we foster these activities, develop social and emotional, okay? Because as we know, we don't want to just key in on the academic enrichment stuff that we usually talk about with gifted, that we want to make sure that the whole child is addressed. And gifted kids do have some social and emotional issues sometimes, but so we talk about those through lessons in the classroom. We've been going into the cluster classrooms and sharing that same kind of information about differences, and it's just different with cluster classrooms. So we've been going in and having a discussion with the regular teachers and their classes also. We also do collaborative learning, which is also going to help with those social skills through cooperative learning, problem solving, discussion, accountable talk. We've got some pictures up here. We've got, I think this is one of Miss Baldwin's activities she did, where they were, and Miss Hernandez did too, but they were trying to build a tower and they couldn't touch the cups. So they had to find a way to work together with their string or rubber bands or whatever it is to figure out how to build a tower and communicate with each other nicely to be able to build their tower. On the right there is some kids doing some Lego robotics, and they're working together on a program that they were building.
Okay, so examining best practices, we were able to visit the Washington School District, and it was pretty exciting because they have over 1,800 qualified gifted students. They're the largest school district in the state, and so we were able to look at different program models, and it was just neat to see all the different things that they're doing. They do have a gifted department with a director of gifted because they have 1,800 students, and so we were able to visit the self-contained classrooms. We were able to visit the pull-out classrooms, and what they're focusing on across the board is grit and the growth mindset. So we were able to see different activities that the teachers were facilitating as the students were building different things, creating different things to show their understanding of grit and the growth mindset. So it was exciting to see, and there were some things that we were able to take away that we may implement in our program as well. Looking ahead.
So looking ahead, some of our future goals are to continue developing programs for future enrichment. So on smaller scales, we're trying some new programs and see if we can scale them out to the whole district. And I'll explain that in just a little bit. We're starting parent meetings in the second quarter. We heard from our gifted committee members that they would like to see increased communication from our department. So we're going to work on a website. We will also be attending the AAGT conference. There's one for parents coming up this Saturday that we've advertised, and then the teacher one is in February. We also want to move beyond just providing gifted services with a pullout, and we want to support the classroom teachers so that kids are truly getting gifted and talented services all day. And then another issue that was brought up in the committee was that we need a progress report, so we're working on developing that. So when I was talking about expanding some programs, I was the recipient of a Diamondbacks grant last year, and with that I purchased hands-on algebra equation programs. And so I've been trying that out with 7th and 8th graders. And I know you might be thinking, well, algebra doesn't sound like that exciting or adventurous, but there's game pieces, and it's really fun because it's almost like a game-like atmosphere where they're building those algebra skills. And then Kevin is a real expert with Lego robotics, so he's been piloting some Lego programs. And this is a group at Creighton School with the algebra. And then on the right is Monte Vista student with the robots. Any questions?
Kind of some comments. I love it that you expanded to all 9 schools. I was trying to count when you were all talking. It didn't work, but it was on the slideshow. And I think it's great to give all our students the opportunity to be part of the gifted program. And ASU for the summer, that was a great experience. Heads up, the more a child, something becomes familiar to the child, the less intimidating it is. And college is a big thing. I wish even our other students could go field tripping to ASU, not just the gifted, but I'm glad somebody's going at least. And thank you very much. Oh, one question. I'm wondering, since you might have said it on some of your other presentations, but I can't remember. When do you start? First grade or kindergarten? When's the youngest? What's the youngest?
We start testing kinders at the end of, in spring. So typically it's 1st through 8th.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else have any other questions? The only question I had was for the teachers, the 2 teachers who are splitting time at 4 schools. That's got to be a lot to manage. So I'm curious how you are able to divide up your time. And the other thing that I thought about, just from a teacher perspective, is like, you know, when you do have those smaller numbers of kids and being able to, you know, so how does it work? Do you have them 1st through 8th grade when you pull them out, or do you do it differently? Do you have like 3 bands that you pull out for either gifted programming, or how does that work? I'm just curious, really.
It kind of depends on the site. For example, at Kennedy, there's 1 2nd grader, no 3rd graders, and 1 4th grader. So that's an easy combination to put that 2nd and 4th together. In some schools, there's larger groups, so they stay by themselves as a grade level. It also depends on the schedule. The schedule length, we don't want to pull them during reading and math, or excuse me, ELA and math. So if 2 grade levels happen to have a mutual science and social studies, that works well. So scheduling is interesting, but I think it is manageable with the 4 sites. We sometimes, you know, go to 2 sites in one day. We are reimbursed for mileage. I think our first year it was a little hard walking into campuses and not knowing people.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's going to get better every year. I've already had people reach out the 2nd year and you know, ask me things, or I had someone invite me into their classroom. So I think it's going to take a while to develop those relationships when you're at 4 schools, but slowly I think it's getting better.
Well, and you know, like I was saying earlier in the study session, it's pretty clear, right, when we look at that graph, that there's an opportunity gap within our district. So I was saying to Dr. Lewis, it'll be interesting, I think, to track our preschool, our current preschool students, or the kids that have been going there for the last 2 years, because we know that it's not as if kids are, you know, that there are more gifted kids in wealthier zip codes. You know, gifted, you know, it's the opportunities that we provide for them. So I look forward to seeing and tracking those kids and seeing how many of them, because of that rich experience and all those opportunities that they had in preschool, then, you know, end up getting tested for gifted. So I appreciate Dr. Dupin and the teachers and all of your hard work, and it was really a great presentation. And of course to Brianna, right? You did a great job tonight. Thank you. Oh, yeah, I forgot I'm still at a meeting. All right, future agenda items?
Could we, I'm looking at October, and I won't be here at the October 3rd meeting. I'm hoping the item called bilingual distinction can be on the 17th. I don't want to slow the board down, but
I don't have a problem with that, as long as at first we can make that happen on the 17th.
yeah.
Anything else with regards to future agenda items?
Move to adjourn.
It's Been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned.